All right, let's talk about alarm clocks. I know, but we're not talking about just any alarm clock. We're going to explore a pretty wild idea. What if, instead of being your morning enemy, your alarm was a fragile life that you had to keep alive? This is the whole idea behind CluckClock, and it's a completely different way to think about waking up. I mean, it's a pretty universal feeling, isn't it? That awful, jarring noise that just rips you out of a perfectly good dream. For a lot of us, the very first thing we interact with every single day is a device we actively, truly despise. But have you ever stopped to wonder why they're even designed that way in the first place? Because honestly, it's true. The whole design philosophy behind most smart alarms is that they're your opponent. Their goal is to antagonize you, to annoy you, to basically bully you out of bed by making sleep more painful than waking up. Now, to be fair, our brains are kind of working against us here. When you first wake up, you're in this state called sleep inertia. You know that feeling, that grogginess, that mental fog where you just can't think straight? Well, neurologically, your brain is literally fighting to pull you back into sleep, which makes that snooze button just so tempting. And of course, this internal tug of war created a huge market opportunity. So instead of making alarms that work with our brains, this whole industry popped up to wage war against that morning grogginess, trying to outsmart our own biology. And this led to a design philosophy built on one thing: brute force. The market just became flooded with apps that promise to get you out of bed by any means necessary. They're not trying to be your friend, they're designed for pure effectiveness, and they get it through just sheer annoyance. And they're not shy about it either. This is the actual marketing slogan for Alarmy, one of the biggest apps out there. They wear the word annoying like a badge of honor. Their entire identity is built on being that obnoxious but supposedly necessary evil in your morning. Their whole strategy is basically a full-on cognitive assault. You can't just tap a button to turn it off. Oh no, you have to solve math problems, and they go all the way up to hell mode. Or you might have to literally get out of bed to scan the barcode on your toothpaste or shake your phone like crazy. It's just this barrage of tasks meant to completely overwhelm your sleepy brain. The method here works by giving you, as one person put it, the slightest dose of panic. It jolts you awake with stress. The alarm will not stop blaring until you complete your mission, and that creates this urgency that makes falling back asleep pretty much impossible. And this is where things get interesting. After decades of alarms built on this idea of annoyance, a new question started to pop up. Is being an antagonist the only way? What if motivation didn't have to come from stress and panic? What if it could come from somewhere else entirely? And this brings us to a totally different idea. Instead of an alarm that you have to fight and conquer, what about an alarm you have to care for? This is the whole premise behind an app called CluckClock. The concept is so simple, but it's really powerful. When the alarm goes off, you don't solve a puzzle, you play a super quick 5-second game to feed your virtual chicken. And that tiny little action, it just shifts the entire dynamic. It goes from being a chore you have to complete to a nurturing act you're actually responsible for. Now, this isn't just some cute little game. There are real stakes here. Your virtual chicken has a health bar, and if you keep failing to wake up and feed it, it gets sick, and eventually it can die. For good. No respawning. So let's walk through it. What's it actually like to use CluckClock day to day? Well, every single morning, your goal is super simple. Just keep your digital pet alive. That's it. So that crowing sound goes off. You've got 3 choices. You can snooze, sure, but it's going to cost you. You can skip the whole thing, but that's an immediate failure for the day. Or you can do the right thing. You can feed the chicken. Okay, so you decide to be a responsible pet owner. You tap Feed Chicken, and it launches you into this simple 5-second reaction game. Worms start popping out of a grid, and your only job is to tap as many as you can before the time runs out. But to make it a little bit of a challenge, not all worms are good worms. Normal worms get you a point. The rare golden ones, they get you 5. But watch out for the fake ones. Those are traps, and they'll cost you 3 points. You have to be quick, but also just awake enough to tell the difference. At the end of that frantic 5 seconds, your score gets tallied up. And that score isn't just for some leaderboard, it directly decides whether you succeed or fail for the day. And that outcome, well, it decides your chicken's fate. And the stakes are crystal clear. Your chicken basically has 3 lives. 1 failure, and it becomes unwell. A 2nd failure, it gets sick. A 3rd failure, and it dies. Permanently.
To nurse it back to health, you need to get consecutive successes. So it creates this gentle but very constant pressure to get up and do the right thing.
So, okay, we've got these two totally different approaches, right? Brute force versus nurturing. But what does the science actually say about how our alarms affect our mood in the morning? Does the type of alarm you use even matter? Well, a really fascinating study from 2024 actually analyzed user data from Alarmy. And it found a direct link between those task-based alarms, the math problems and photo missions, and an increase in morning nervousness. The longer and harder the task was, the more stressed out people felt when they woke up. This research brings up a really key question about something like CluckClock. If those brute force alarms are scientifically linked to feeling nervous, what's the emotional impact of a care-based alarm? I mean, it still uses a form of stress, the fear of your pet dying, but it's a fundamentally different kind of stress, isn't it? And that really brings us to these two competing philosophies. On one side, you've got the alarms that try to annoy you into being awake, using panic as their main tool. And on the other, you have an alarm that tries to make you feel responsible, using care and the fear of loss as its motivator. Both use stress, for sure, but the source of that stress is worlds apart. And all of this leads to a bigger question about, well, the future of how we start our day. We have absolutely mastered the art of annoyance. But maybe the next big step isn't about building a better enemy, but about finding a better partner in that daily struggle to just wake up. And really, that's the thought I want to leave you with. What CluckClock suggests is that maybe the most powerful motivator for self-discipline isn't beating ourselves up with puzzles and tasks. Maybe it's attachment. Maybe it's finding something outside of ourselves to care for, even if it's just a tiny virtual chicken whose survival depends entirely on you getting out of bed.